So I'm hyperventilating a little bit. If I fall over, pick me up because I've got some things to say.
Though we adore men individually, we agree that as a group they're rather stupid.
That men are essential for procreation, but when it comes to pleasure, unnecessary.
Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth.
Safety lights are for dudes. Safety lights are for dudes.
Well, put some skates on. Be your own hero.
Hang the knee, Kristen.
Lord.
Please give it up for the dazzling vocal stylings of Miss Kimberly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 81 of Citizen Dame, the podcast where a couple of us ladies get together and talk about how weird the world is and everything's going crazy. I'm Karen Peterson, joined by Kristen Lopez.
Hello.
And Lauren Humphreys-Brooks.
Hello.
And there's so much weirdness, I'm not even quite sure where to start. But we're going to go ahead and start with the most recent weirdness that just happened about 11 hours ago. O.J. Simpson has decided that people don't talk about him enough anymore, and so he wants to join Twitter, and he posted a weird-ass video about, like, hey, I'm coming for you, which, considering his history, is a little bit scary. And it's also a little bit weird that he decided that the week of the anniversary of his ex-wife's murder and her friend's murder is the time to do it. But anyway, that's a thing that happened.
As I said to my roommate earlier, Twitter is very clusterfucky today. That was one of the first things that I saw when I woke up. I was like, oh, O.J. Simpson is trending. And I was like, oh my God, why? And it's like he's trying to make a brand out of being like, oh, aren't I a charming, like, potential murderer that I totally didn't do it, but everybody kind of knows that I did, you know? It's very strange. Twitter is reaching the point where it's crossing over into just random surrealism, so it's kind of enjoyable in that sense, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, like if 2019 wasn't weird enough, I mean, O.J. Simpson on Twitter, that's a thing that's happening apparently, so we'll see how that goes. I love that some people have already started trolling him, though. I mean, that's pretty great.
I mean, of course, but it's also giving him attention. That's one of the problems with it, is that if you're quote tweeting the guy, he's getting attention. People are following him. People are paying attention to him. And it's like, we don't want this man to have any clout. Like, seriously.
I know. Like, I mean, I tweeted about it and I didn't even tag him. But even that, I was like, I'm adding to this mess, you know?
Yeah, it's always a problem.
Yeah. Yep. Kristen, what did you think about the news that O.J. Simpson's on Twitter and you can follow him?
I didn't know about it until we just started talking about it right now. But I think Lauren's...
Good morning!
Lauren said everything I would have said.
Where should we go from here? There was some more news. Franco Zeffirelli died. Was that this morning or yesterday?
I think it was reported this morning.
Okay.
He was 96.
Yeah, so I mean, he's an old dude.
He's a very old dude.
Franco Zeffirelli is the director of the 1968 version of Romeo and Juliet, the one that they showed us in high school, and everyone like laughs when she shows her boobs, you know, because teenagers are like that. He did a lot of things too. He also worked in. Didn't he work in Broadway or? He
may have. He also did the version of Taming of the Shrew with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. I believe he did Tea with Mussolini. He was actually like quite a prolific director all the way through the 1960s, 70s to like even the contemporary period. I think that this one hit me because his Shakespeare adaptations were among the first that I ever saw, and I actually really like his version of Taming of the Shrew, which is such a problematic play no matter what, but because you've got Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton there who are just like fucking wailing on each other. I mean, they like get really physically violent with one another throughout that film, and it, even though you've still got all of these issues that are attached to that play, it actually works with the two of them, and it makes sense, and like their relationship feeds into the relationship of Kate and Petruchio. It's a really, I encourage people to see it. I don't think a lot of people watch it anymore. It's a really interesting adaptation of that play.
I actually remember watching that one in high school too. We watched that, and then we watched the the moonlighting episode where they used it. It's pretty funny. But yeah, you're right. That was a really great adaptation. I forgot he also did he did Endless Love in 1981. I totally forgot.
Oh my god, that movie's awful.
So the movie is terrible, but does that mean I get to thank him for Tom Cruise?
You need to thank him for making a truly atrocious movie that just happens to star Tom Cruise.
It doesn't star Tom Cruise, but it was his first on-screen credit, so, you know.
I don't think he should thank him either, so...
Yeah, that movie is
This
really
feeds
terrible.
into one of the questions we asked on Twitter: how many Tom Cruise movies has Karen seen?
And the answer is all of them. I have seen all of the Tom Cruise movies, most more than once. Well, speaking of Tom Cruise... some more weirdness happened this week. It's so weird to me with everything that's gone on that this was actually in the week that we're still in. It feels like it was a month ago, but last weekend, I think it was Sunday night, maybe Monday, Justin Bieber was apparently like watching something on TV about Tom Cruise and went, yeah, I could fight that guy. So he went on Twitter and challenged Tom Cruise. Justin Bieber challenged Tom Cruise to a fight in the octagon.
Children, this is why you don't do drugs.
My favorite things about this are Tom Cruise is 31 years older than Justin Bieber, and everyone immediately jumped in to say, dude, he would kick your ass, Biebs. Like, what are you thinking? So it was a fun week for me watching everyone talk about how Tom Cruise would totally kick his ass. But this led to some very funny conversations about, like, who would you challenge to a fight? Preferably that's 31 years older than you, because that's so damn ridiculous. And I'm trying to find some of the great responses we got, because we threw that out there on our Twitter account. There were some, like, Betty White.
Man, I think Betty White could take people, though.
I
like,
really think she could.
She's old, but she is wiry. I mean, I know that someone tried to challenge Dick Van Dyke, and then, like, someone else challenged Angela Lansbury. I challenged Angela Lansbury just because she knows what she did. But someone else also did, and then Dick Van Dyke actually responded to them and was just like, I will defend her honor, meet me by the piers. Like, holy shit.
I love him. Yeah, my mom the other day, because we were talking about this too, and she was like, I mean, I guess Dick Van Dyke, but he would beat me.
See?
And I said, but he wouldn't beat you because he's respectful of women.
That's the thing. He was defending Angela Lansbury's honor. You're just like, oh, wow. I mean...
He's so great. So yeah, some of the other ones, Morgan Freeman. I had Diane Keaton and Sally Field, and I was like, yeah, I don't like my chances. So, Whoopi Goldberg, she would definitely hurt someone. I think one of the things, though, I mean, this all started with Justin Bieber, and Kristen, I think your comments were right. Like, don't do drugs, kids, especially if you're gonna tweet. But we just see all kinds of weirdness on Twitter these days, and sometimes I wonder, why do we continue?
It's one of those, reactions. I think we've talked about this in a more serious vein before. It's one of those reactions of, like, having celebrities on Twitter and having, quote, regular people on Twitter, on the one hand, can give you a lot of great access to people. It means that you actually get to talk to people that you admire. You can have responses. You can even have conversations with, artists and actors. The other side of it is that it's basically a free-for-all. And if a celebrity particularly does their own tweeting, so they haven't hired an assistant or PR person to do their tweeting for them, if they actually are like a presence on Twitter, it can get really weird, and it can get particularly kind of disturbing at times. I mean, you've had those issues of, like, celebrities getting angry at fans or at critics and then, like, retweeting them.
Armie Hammer doesn't tweet anymore, Lauren. We don't have to bring him up.
I actually, until you shouted that, I was like, I completely forgotten that Armie Hammer had been on Twitter and got himself into trouble. But yeah, it's weird because you have this access to celebrities in a way, and to just people in general, in a kind of a distanced way, and it can result in some really cool stuff, but it can also result in some really weird and even really toxic stuff. So you've got Justin Bieber, who like went onto Twitter for some reason and challenged Tom Cruise to a cage fight. And it's like, and yeah, and then of course everybody latches onto it and begins making fun of it, and begins laughing about it. And this one was kind of fun, as a result, because it was so ridiculous. But then you also have people like O.J. Simpson, who are famous for killing two people, like, and we're going off on like him being on Twitter and having a following and all of that. It's a very strange kind of amalgam of things.
It is, and you get a president that likes to just spew gunk too. I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean that's the other side of it, and I don't think that Donald Trump would be president right now if it wasn't for Twitter.
That's actually probably really true. Not every conversation with famous people can be Kristen rebooting dinosaurs with Rafael Casal.
I'm still very, very happy about that. We both share a love for 90s ABC children's programming.
Well, it makes sense because you're both 90s children.
He's welcome to come on the podcast and talk about that anytime he wants. Open invitation.
All right, so this week we had some garbage people to discuss. Max Landis is back in the news because he is like herpes. He never goes away. My understanding of what happened this week, at least from the way I was following it, was he hadn't actually done specifically anything new. What happened was that Whitney Moore went on Twitter. Was it on Twitter? I think it was on Twitter. It was on social media, and it got shared on Twitter right now. To say, I mean, she posted a thing. There weren't any specific accusations against him, but what she was saying was that she's been basically just not talking about what a terrible human being he is, and watching him have all this success, watching people praise him left and right, and she's just got to the point where she can't stay quiet about him anymore. And she said, "I never thought I would say anything publicly about the things Max Landis did to me because I believed that forgiveness was the correct way to heal. I even defended him for so long because I truly believed he was getting better and that the ways he tortured me was isolated to our relationship. I thought there was no point in sharing the horrific, inhumane things he did to me because publicly condemning someone who is working on themselves is unproductive." So basically she believed that he was trying to get better. We all want to believe that people mean it when they say, I'm going to do better, I'm going to do better. She hasn't, like I said, she hasn't specifically said these are the things that he did, but she's just ready to talk about it now, which opened up the floodgates. And so then a lot of people started talking about him again and questioning why he keeps getting all these deals, why he keeps getting projects announced, big high-profile pictures with a lot of money behind them. And the truth about him is out there. This isn't like just these random, occasional accusations that float around that make you wonder about someone. Like, there's no question here about some of the crap that he has done, some of the terrible things he has done. And yet he still keeps getting opportunities.
Well, but I think it's also important to point out that this came after, I want to say a couple months ago, there had been an anonymous Medium post that had been put up on the website Medium that had talked about how the Hollywood Reporter is going to write this big Esquire X expose on Max Landis, and that they had shelved it because the anonymous woman, along with several others, were, quote, all unwilling to put our real names on the record for fear of harassment. And so I'm wondering if this is in the hopes of getting more of those women to let their names be used so that this expose can go forward.
The thing with Max Landis is that I think a lot of people said this. We've known about it for years, and it's been pretty much public knowledge that he's a horrible human being. I do think one of the issues that we always come down to is that in the Medium post, it was discussed what he actually did to her. In this post, the vagueness is difficult because you're like, okay, well, what does this mean? And then people idiots, but people go off and are just like, oh, she's lying. Why won't she just say what's happened? All of that stuff. And, a number of feminist critics have talked about this being like this need for one of the issues that we've run into in the Me Too movement has been women having to basically open their wounds, sometimes of things that had happened years before, sometimes things that happened the day before, and just to have to open this up in order to try, and not always succeed, at convincing people that what happened to them was real. And that's a really harsh thing to force women to do. But at the same time, it's become a necessity because these guys keep on getting away with it. They keep on being able to, it keeps on just sliding off of them. And someone like Max Landis, he's not particularly talented. He's not particularly influential. He's not particularly good even at his job, as in addition to being a total creep and asshole. The only thing that he has going for them is that he's the son of John Landis. He's got clout and he's got protection. And it's so harsh for these women to then have to try to affect change without completely exposing themselves.
I was going to say, and I have to laugh at the people who still believe Landis's name means anything, because when was the last time Papa Landis had a hit?
But it must mean something, because seriously, there is no reason for Max Landis to be anybody other than the fact that his father is John Landis. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, his film credits, at least as far as stuff that people have actually seen, is like Chronicle, which a few people saw, I guess, Victor Frankenstein, American Ultra, Bright, that gem of a Netflix catastrophe. So it's like Max Landis, people keep saying, oh no, he's great. Really? I have yet to see any evidence of that.
The only one of his films that I'm aware of that got any really good critical response was Chronicle. And like nothing else. I mean, so that's the thing. I don't know. The only thing that I could think of is that there's still this I don't know how much power necessarily the Landis family, as it were, has behind the scenes in Hollywood, but there is certainly this still present love of John Landis in the film community for what he has done in terms of contributions to cinema, really in the 1980s. I mean, that's pretty much late 70s and into the 80s. That was pretty much the last time he had anything that was really interesting. But he's still, a number of his films are still very iconic. He's still a very iconic figure. It just seems to be another example of a very privileged kid who's being protected by the power of his family, and continues to be protected by them. And who knows how long this is going to take. Hopefully, this will just mean that eventually they're just going to leave. They're going to leave Max Landis behind. Whether or not this is never going to result in any criminal charges or anything like that. But hopefully, eventually, he will just stop getting hired.
I think that's eventually what will happen, especially if he's still doing this stuff. These are not accusations that are in the distant past. Like, he's still doing things. And I think there's going to come a point, with a lot of these guys, that eventually they're just not worth the hassle of working.
Well, his daddy did murder 3 people, so, I have no faith in the system. And I don't want anybody to tweet me, oh, he got acquitted, so did OJ, okay?
System is definitely not always going to convict the wrong. So also in Garbage People this week, so Cuba Gooding Jr. was accused of groping a woman in a bar I think it was in New York. And this was like a week or two ago that this came out, that she had accused him. Well, he actually is being charged, and he showed up to jail and turned himself in the other day. So he was booked on charges of misdemeanor forcible touching and sexual abuse in the 3rd degree for groping a woman at a bar. The maximum penalty, if he is convicted, is a year in jail. So let's see. As a celebrity, carry the one. He will do 10 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, not even close.
So, yeah, basically, he turned himself in, so this is going forward. They're actually taking it seriously. I'm guessing what will happen is he'll plead, and and end up doing like a suspended sentence or something like that. But basically what happened, it was his, so there's surveillance footage, and it shows him and his girlfriend approaching a woman and sitting down next to her, and then he reaches over to touch her thigh and then touches her breast. Apparently that is on surveillance camera, or on the camera. So we know how cameras help people get convicted of stuff all the time.
I was gonna say, there's no audio, so if the R. Kelly rules apply, then he's good. He'll go free.
Well, and I think that he's denied that anything inappropriate happened. So he's not even saying, yeah, I totally did it. I'm sorry, which I would actually respect. You know, I am at the point with these guys that I'm like, you know what, if you've done particularly something like this that is gross and disturbing and wrong, but is not to the extent of rape, but I would actually respect this guy being like, I did it, I'm wrong, I was wrong, I'm really sorry to the person that I hurt. That would, you know, at least show some degree of remorse and some degree of like, you know, I shouldn't have done that. You know, some exception of being like, you know, yes, I was a bad person and I'm going to try not to be a bad person anymore.
It's really weird that like his girlfriend was right there.
I mean, you don't know what type of relationship they have, so.
No, I know, but it's like, is she just not saying anything, or are they just not report? Like, I want to know what her version of the events are, you know? I don't see anything. I haven't come across anything where they even talk to her, so it's super weird. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. Oh, yeah, let's talk about Midsommar. I don't know how to transition from real-life horror to movie horror, but we'll just do it that way. Midsommar is coming out soon, and that's the Ari Aster film follow-up to Hereditary, which broke Twitter with a bunch of film bros who just thought it was the second coming of horror movies. And now he's coming back with Midsommar, which we all, I think, agree that the trailer looks a hell of a lot like The Wicker Man from, 1973. But Jordan Peele saw the movie and says it's unlike anything that's ever existed in the history of the world. I have questions.
Yeah. I want to hear what Kristen thinks first before I go off on it.
As somebody who thought Hereditary was terrifying when it came out, and I still do, I'm excited to see this. I know it looks like The Wicker Man. I'm not saying that it doesn't look like The Wicker Man. But at the same time, I still am very excited to see what he's gonna do. So I'm ready. I actually think I go see it next Thursday, I think. I see it relatively soon.
Okay, but what do you think about Jordan Peele saying this is unlike any movie that's ever...
It's what every celebrity director, or really what any critic that goes to a film festival does, which is create false hype. I mean, I don't think that it's the scariest thing that's ever gonna come out, but I think that, as we've seen, directors love to support directors that remind them of them. And so I think he wants to help a friend out by creating some hype for it.
I've got so many mixed feelings about everything. I mean, at the end of the day, I am going to go see Midsommar because I'm sort of interested just to see what it is and what it winds up looking like. And, we should always be careful about judging things solely based upon their trailers because they're also trying to promote a particular concept of the film. I mean, we've talked about this. One of the issues that I had with Hereditary was that it was... While it did some very unique things, and I think it deserved praise for the unique things that it did, ultimately, to me, it was incredibly derivative, and not in a like, yes, all film, and particularly horror film, uses elements of the films that have come before it, and it's kind of hard to reach a point where you're making something completely unique, and that's not going to happen. But one of the issues that I had with Hereditary is that there were whole sections and even whole shots that lifted images and concepts and concerns and themes from what I consider to be much better horror films. One of the major ones was Rosemary's Baby, which, you know, is in itself a very unique horror film and is still an iconic horror film. And by the time I got to the end of Hereditary, I was like, well, I feel like a lot of the horror that I just watched, I've seen before. And I've seen it done better. And I've seen it done with more interest in the humanity of the characters. And so that's one of the things that concerns me then turning around to Midsommar is that, you know, almost immediately when the first trailer came out, everyone was like, oh, it looks like The Wicker Man. It's like, okay, so we have a director who's already made a fairly derivative horror film, making another film that looks and is presented as very similar to another iconic horror film. And that immediately just raises questions for me. Whether or not Midsommar ultimately does that, whether or not, you know, is it going to change the game in horror? No, I have a feeling that it isn't. I don't know. And I will wait to see the film to, you know, make that judgment. But I don't hold a great deal of hope about it in terms of its ability to shift the needle in any sense. Wicker Man, one of the things that works with Wicker Man is that particularly the first time that you see it, and if you don't know anything about it, 3/4 of the film doesn't look like a horror film. And the first time that I saw it, all I knew about it was that it was a very iconic horror movie. And I'm sitting there, and it's, you know, it's whatever, nearly a 2-hour film, and I'm sitting there going, like, when does the horror happen? Like, it's kind of creepy, it's kind of weird, but it's sort of nice, and it builds this really interesting society and these interesting relationships and everything. And then the horror actually happens, and it's shocking. And it's still shocking. It's shocking 30, 40, 50 years on. One of the issues that I'm having with Midsommar is that I'm already like, okay, I kind of know where the horror is going to be. Do I know exactly what's going to happen? No, but I know what it is going to give me, what it's going to try to present to me. And I don't... that's not important to me in a horror film. I don't really want to sit there going like, oh, I want to be grossed out, I want to be horrified. No, I want you to give me something interesting. It can be scary, but it has to be interesting.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we were talking about in Slack was the difference between, so like Ari Aster with Hereditary, people just immediately jumped in on like, oh, he's the next great horror director, and I didn't feel that way at all. I actually felt very empty when I watched Hereditary. I didn't feel scared by it at all. And like you said, I felt like everything in it was, well, maybe not everything, but a lot of the things in it were things that I had seen in other movies and had seen done just as well or better. And I didn't see anything about Ari Aster that really excited me to see like what he does next. I think Midsommar looks like it could be a very pretty, in a lot of ways, horror movie, which is kind of weird. But I like Florence Pugh. I think she's a good actress. And so I'm intrigued by it. But it's just this idea that Ari Aster is somehow making stuff that no one's ever made before. It's just so weird to me. And it's like... And it's coming from people who have seen all these other horror movies, too. It's not like people who have no experience with horror coming in and saying, oh no, this is exciting and new, because these guys know better. One of the things that particularly caught my attention was with Jordan Peele being the one talking about it, because, and this is one of the parts of the conversation we were having, was just with Hereditary, there's no other emotion besides like just depression. It's just such a depressing film. It's so bleak. There's no humor in it at all. That's one of the things that you need with horror, is you need something to break that up and something to give it more depth and dimension. And with Hereditary, you didn't get that. And so then that led me to thinking about Jordan Peele and the difference between Get Out and Us, and how Get Out was very successful partly because it used humor so much to accentuate the horror and to give you a little bit of a break from it and to make you just question what's really going on. And then you have Us, which has some really funny stuff in the beginning, But once it gets to kind of the point, or once it gets toward the point that it's making, it's in a lot of ways it's like Hereditary, where it's just is very one-dimensional emotionally, and so it's less successful than Get Out was. So I think that I don't like, if this is the direction that horror is going, I don't like it. I need facets emotionally in order to really be able to engage with it.
I gotta disagree with the way that you approach Hereditary, because I don't see it as depressing. I see it as anxiety inducing, and I think that there is some subtle humor. That dinner table scene, specifically in Hereditary, my mom and I laugh at that, mostly because we've had that argument, and we've had those moments where, like, when Tony Collette is talking about that face on his face, like that line makes us laugh because we've had that argument where you don't even know how to form a good insult. And it's not a laugh out loud movie, but I do think there are moments that are relatable in the sense of how families approach each other. But for me, the tone is always anxious and just waiting for. I didn't end the movie depressed per se, but I did feel like in a heightened state of awareness. And that's just how I took it. But I do think that for me, the scariest movies are the ones that just induce that fear of like it. I think it left me in a similar sense of like always being nervous about what's behind me. And I think this might be incredibly weird, but like it and Hereditary to me induced the same level of terror, just in different ways. So I don't know. That's just how I approach the film.
Well, and I think that there are different ways to approach these films, and but it's interesting that you bring up It, which does have a lot of humor in it.
Right.
And it does have light moments. It does have moments of the kids just playing, or facing the real life terrors of the bullies. And it has that balance. I do agree with Karen that I think that Hereditary is imbalanced because it starts out very low, just in terms of the tone of the film, and rather than, it doesn't have much place to go because it starts out so depressive or so anxious or whatever kind of word. I think I agree with Karen that it is a depressive film. And it does summon anxiety. I absolutely agree that he's good at creating tension. He's good at creating you waiting for that next moment of horror. And actually one of the strengths, I think, of it is that there is such a long section of that film where nothing supernatural particularly happens. It's just about building kind of the family relationships and the reaction, particularly to grief. And that's some of the most powerful sections of the film, I think, are definitely a part of that. But the problem is, because it starts so low, it doesn't have much place else to go with it. So by the time you get to the end, I was actually almost relieved by the end of the film. I was just like, oh, thank God, everyone's dead. Oh my God, like, these people really just needed to die. Like, that was that sense. And I don't think that that's sustainable in horror. That isn't generally the kind of horror that I like. We were talking about on the Slack the sort of horror that you go back to. And one of the things, all of the great horror films for me are films that I can watch multiple times, knowing the twists, knowing the jump scares, knowing the moments that I'm going to be frightened, and still enjoy them and still find value in them. And that's true for movies like Halloween. That's true for movies like Get Out, which I can definitely go back to and watch numerous times and find a great deal of pleasure in watching them. Hereditary, I had no pleasure in. And I do think that horror needs some kind of pleasure. Sometimes it's just that release of tension when you get those films that build it up and then it just releases it. It is about humor. I mean, most of the films that we've mentioned have some kind of humor in them, even if it's just nervous laughter. But those moments of lightness that actually create more darkness, that you're not really relieved at the end of the film when everyone has died or when most of the people have died. because it's just been such a slog, but you're actually still leaving the theater with that feeling of fear and of these people survived, but the killer is still out there kind of thing, or the ghost is still in the house. And that's the best kind of horror to me, and that's something that Hereditary doesn't have in any particularly equal measure. And I think that makes it a weaker film than, and that's what I think makes it not as iconic and not having the potential to be as iconic as similar films like It, which I think is going to be an iconic film, or Rosemary's Baby, or Halloween, or even Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which has a sort of delirious humor to it, and is at the same time a very unpleasant film.
But at the same time, does every horror film have? I think that what the problem I see is that the hype train and what Peele's doing is attempting to make it this quote unquote iconic feature. Does every horror film? I think the problem is every horror film setting out to be iconic, and do they necessarily have to be?
I think that every horror film wants to be successful. I think that that's what it's really coming down to. You want to scare people, and I don't know. I can't speak for every filmmaker or anything like that. I think that most filmmakers want to make a film that affects people in some way, and that produces a good response. And there can be an argument about what is good horror and what is bad horror, and people argue about it. And different horror does different things. I do think that the most successful horror films are ones that are not just dwelling in darkness consistently, that actually have moments of lightness, moments of humor, human feeling. I mean, that was an issue that I had with Hereditary, is that I didn't feel much by the end of it. I was just like, these are not people anymore. They're just like, they're just things almost. And, maybe that's what he was going for. But again, it's not pleasurable. So it's not something that I want to go back to. It's not something that I particularly want to elevate in any way as a critic or as a viewer.
Lauren and I definitely see eye to eye on this one, but I also recognize that humor too, but horror is very subjective, and what scares me doesn't scare you, and vice versa. So I guess for anybody that's listening to this, if there's something about Hereditary that makes it a sustainable movie for you that you keep wanting to go back to, besides Toni Collette's performance, please, let us know. Go on Twitter and just tell us, because I'm really curious. What is it about Hereditary that works so well for you?
Can I throw out one suggestion?
Yes.
For me, I think what Ari Aster does well with that movie is playing on the visceral, and by that I'm going to go with sound effects. For me, I am one of those, maybe because I've had so many injuries before in my life, the sound effects in that movie, whether that be, and I don't want to spoil things, but a certain person's head hitting something, or somebody sawing something, like that part of the movie is what stuck with me more than anything else. Just the way he employs very visceral elements of sound. Like, I don't sit down to watch Hereditary, but if it's on, I'd probably watch it again, and I would still be, I think that he plays on squeamishness in a way that, there's something about seeing like buckets of blood or something that you're just, for me, I'm just kind of like, whatever, special effects. I know how movies are made. But when you're playing on like tangible things like sound, it's a different reaction. So for me, that's what Hereditary does so well for me.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I actually agree with you. I think that some of the scariest moments in that film are what we hear and don't see. And actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the head loss, because the part that actually got me in the film, and I think it's okay to talk about spoilers probably, because it's been out.
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, it's been out. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody listening to this that cares about Hereditary has not already seen it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to know, fast forward 5 minutes. There you go. You've been warned. Spoil it, Lauren.
Well, so the moment, when the whole sequence where he drives home and gets out of the car and doesn't wake anyone up and goes to bed and lies down in bed And I think that I would have to actually watch the scene again, which I don't particularly want to do. But I think that the camera stays on him in the morning, lying in bed.
It does, yeah.
And hearing his parents get up and move around, and then hearing his mother scream. And that is one of the most haunting sections, I think, of the film to me. And it is horrible. And you know, again, my problem is that because the rest of the film is so heavy, I can't bring myself to go back to it because it is a very powerful sequence. But I also never want to see it again. And I don't want to see the rest of the film that surrounds it. I do think that there are other criticisms to be made of Hereditary beyond just whether or not it's a successful horror film, just in terms of its treatment of the female characters, its treatment of disability, its treatment of, you know, its use of women in terms of horror, and not just the Toni Collette character, but the sister, and the grandmother, and kind of the whole mythos that the film develops. I think that it fails in places that it might have done something really interesting that other films had done. And it kind of falls into a not quite misogynist, but beginning to get there kind of category of horror that does begin to make me uncomfortable.
I will add that there are definitely things about it that are very, very well done. It's not a terrible movie. I didn't dislike Hereditary. It just didn't work for me the way it worked for a lot of other people.
Well, I think that comes back to the discussion that we had about hype, about the fact that, like, as you were saying, Kristen, that it's so, like, does every film really need to be iconic? Does it really have to be the best thing ever? And one of the issues that I think a lot of us had with when Hereditary came out, and that we're now having with Midsommar, is that it's elevating these films as being like, it is the scariest movie ever made. It's like, no, there's no such thing as the scariest movie ever made, because, like you say, you know, what scares me is not going to scare someone else, and it's going to affect us in different ways. So it's hard to then go into a film where you've been constantly told, oh, this is the scariest thing you're ever going to see in your life, and then sit there and go like, well, it didn't scare me that much, or, you know, it doesn't work on different levels. So we do have to pull back on the hype, I think, and this is particularly a problem that critics have and that horror fans have, of treating every film as though it changes the whole structure of the genre.
Hyperbole really needs to stop, especially when it comes to film critics. Like, just write what you feel about it, but don't exaggerate. Don't be hyperbolic.
And film critics should know better. People like Jordan Peele should know better. But yeah.
So, all right. Well, we will move on now. We got some questions this week. Some fun questions, too. This one's from @KH Derek. If you could unsee one film, wipe it entirely from your memory, what would it be? I actually have a Letterboxd list that is called List of Films I'll Have Erased from My Memory whenever they finally invent the procedure from Eternal Sunshine. Some of the movies on that: Escape from Tomorrow. Did you guys ever see that one?
No, I know of it, though.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's the movie that was secretly filmed at Disney World. It is so bad. It's probably my least favorite movie I have ever seen in my life. So I'd say that one. Jack and Jill, where Adam Sandler plays twins. It's really terrible. Gringo, with David Oyelowo and Charlize Theron and Nash Edgerton directed it. His brother Joel is in it too, so that one's really bad. The Beach Bum is probably my most recent addition. What do you guys have?
I would say Showgirls 2, Pennies from Heaven. I would love to never have to think that I sat through that 2.5-hour homemade movie. It's fucking atrocious. And it actually almost seeks to undo how much I love the first Showgirls. So, yeah. There's no other movie that I would ever consider wiping from my brain other than that one.
I was having difficulty thinking about this because there are the films that I really hated, but kind of resulted in some really interesting conversations. One of them is Blade Runner 2049, which I still fucking hate so much. But I got to talk about it a lot, and I had some really interesting conversations as a result, and I think wrote some interesting stuff about it. So on the one hand, I'm like, oh, I really wish I hadn't seen that movie, but on the other hand, I'm like, but I got something out of it. one of the films, and this is going to be odd because I actually think it's one of his best films, but I kind of wish I hadn't seen it, and it has continued to haunt me, I think, pretty much ever since I saw it when I was way too young for it, is Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, which is a very good, very disturbing film. And I think I was 13 when I saw it, and it was not a film I should have seen at the age of 13. And I kind of wish, I don't necessarily wish that I could wipe it from my memory. I wish I could wipe it from my memory from that time and bring it forward a little bit. So be a little bit older when I actually saw it. Because when I saw it, I did not really realize what the subject was, and I did not realize how dark it was going to be. And it was at a point where I loved Hitchcock. I had pretty much seen everything else that he had done, so it was kind of natural to watch it. And I mean, it was to the point where my parents actually had to take the videotape and put it in the basement because just seeing the cover of it bothered me so much. Fantastic film. Wish I had not seen it at the age of 13. Those are the two, I think.
We'd like to know all yours too, so tweet us and let us know. The next question came from Merlin, at Scripted Merlin. What are your favorite musicals, stage and or film?
So I always say Spring Awakening, the last 5 years. Oh gosh, those are the stage things at least. I know I probably have far more that I could think of if I had more time. Hamilton, obviously. We're talking movies, I always go Singing in the Rain. I like On an Island with You. The Esther Williams musicals, I enjoy a lot. Meet Me in St. Louis. Those are the biggies.
In terms of movies, I mean, I love pretty much all of the Aster and Rogers films. My favorite is The Gay Divorcee, which, just because it's actually a very good comedy in addition to being a very good musical, and I just like that period of their collaboration together. They're great. I really like Guys and Dolls. I think it's loads of fun. And
the movie or the play?
Movie. No, the movie.
Okay. I
mean, I've actually seen the play. I have seen the play, but I actually love the dancing in Guys and Dolls. It's Michael Kidd choreography, and I love the weirdness of casting Marlon Brando in a musical.
Brando trying to sing and dance is a thing of beauty,
and it's just like it's fun and it's strange, and I will sit down and watch it. And some of it is also just the supporting cast, like the guys who play the guys are just great, and I like Gene Simmons. It's one of those films that, in addition to it being a musical, again, I like the comedy in it and I like the story. So yeah, those are the two that I sort of thought of almost immediately. Of course, I love Hamilton. I think that we all love Hamilton. I did just see Hadestown, which is a very good stage musical. Yeah, I think that those are the ones that I would go for.
I do not love Hamilton because I've not seen Hamilton, but my favorite stage musical is Wicked. I love it. I've seen it 5 or 6 times now, I think. That's the one I've seen on stage the most. But my stage experience is very limited just because I've only ever gotten to see the stuff that tours, and there are probably so many things that go on Broadway that never make it this way, or at least not in a cost-effective way. So, it's like I just don't get those experiences. But I love movie musicals. There's so many. My very favorite is The Sound of Music. My mom and I used to watch that all the time. I know every note. I still can't watch that movie without singing along. I love Moulin Rouge. Then there are some that are like, I don't know if it's technically a musical or not, like Sing Street I really liked.
That's a musical.
Yeah, that's a musical.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like when people ask me if Llewyn Davis is a musical. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, alright. So yeah, I love Sing Street. I think that one's really good. So yeah, I love musicals. I pretty much, if there's a movie musical, I will give it a try. I don't always love all of them, but I'll at least check it out. So that's definitely a big thing for me. I love movie music. It's just, I love it. It's my favorite thing. So yeah, good question. Thank you. And then Ryan McDermott, at Ryan McDermott, asked, In honor of a new Men in Black film, what are some of your favorite makeup effects in?
I don't know, man. I was trying to think about this. I am a horrible human being, and like fashion, I do not pay that close attention to the makeup in films. I usually only notice it. Which I guess it means they're doing their job, because I usually only notice it when it's really bad. I'll give a shout out to Suspiria and the makeup that they did on Tilda Swinton. That was actually very good and very convincing. But that's really the only one that I can think of off the top of my head.
I hate to throw out a John Landis movie, but American Werewolf in London has some really great makeup effects. I also say The Witches. If anybody's seen that movie, what they do to Angelica Houston's character in that film is brilliant. And I also really enjoyed the vampire effects from Dusk Till Dawn. So those are the three.
The Witches also scarred me as a child.
Oh, The Witches is brilliant.
It is, but it scarred me as a child. Yet again, movies that Lauren should not have seen when she was young.
I maintain that Angelica Houston, that's a documentary, so I both love her and I'm deathly afraid of her.
That's fair. I loved basically anything that Doug Jones has had a part in. It's had great makeup. Beetlejuice, I think, is really fun. Dick Tracy. That was one that had really fun makeup. The movie itself is not great, but the makeup is really fun. Like some of the characters, because it's all prosthetics and makeup. It's not. This was in the early '90s, so it wasn't CGI. So it's like there are people in that movie that are completely unrecognizable, and it's awesome. I love it. Like I did not know for the longest time that Dustin Hoffman was Mumbles, and it's like you just don't see him in it, and then when you see it, you finally can. But yeah, so that one's a good one too. So all right, fun stuff. All right, so this week, as far as trailers go, we had a big one with Dr. Sleep. Did you guys watch the trailer? Dr. Sleep is basically a sequel to The Shining. Stephen King wrote the book. It came out in 2013, I believe. And it is about Danny Torrance all grown up. And so the movie will star Ewan McGregor as Danny Torrance. And Rebecca Ferguson is in it. She plays the villain, which I think is going to be really fun. So, I don't know. What did you guys think of the trailer? What do you know of the story so far, anyway? Has anybody read the book?
I haven't read the book. I read The Shining, and I know about Dr. Sleep. One of the things that interested me about the trailer is that it integrated a lot of stuff directly from Kubrick's The Shining, which is bold. A very bold thing to do for a filmmaker to actually make use of images from, again, we're talking about iconic horror films. One of the most iconic horror films ever made. As someone who's not a huge fan of Stephen King's writing, but actually generally enjoys adaptations of his work, I am intrigued. So we'll see. I have mixed feelings with Mike Flanagan as a director. I was not a fan of what he did to Hill House. But I have liked some of his other horror films. So, well, for me, it's a kind of wait and see movie.
Yeah. All I know about the book is that my mom read it and said it was terrible. So that doesn't exactly bode well for me. I have issues with King wanting to go back to the well. And watching the trailer for this and having read the plot synopsis of the book, I was like, yeah, this sounds like a Stephen King thing that he would write in 2019, where it's just got like, I'm actually fascinated by what Flanagan's going to keep, because the plot line of the novel sounds incredibly convoluted and dumb. So who knows? Like Lauren said, I enjoy Hush, his film, but Hill House was a little too This Is Us for my taste. So I don't know. I mean, Ewan McGregor's immortal. So that'll be interesting to see. And Rebecca Ferguson, it'll be great to watch her in a role where she can do something. Recreating a movie that I would say is iconic and is incredibly scary. Here's my problem, okay? I read the plot synopsis to the book, which if you've seen the movie, the book is very different than the movie. So, like, already I was reading the plot synopsis for Dr. Sleep, and they were talking about a character that is not alive in the original film. And so I was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is the reminder that the 1980s version was a little racist. And then you have the fact in the trailer that the little girl is African American. I was just like, we really want to remind people that Stephen King really likes that whole mystical Negro trope. Like, I don't know. I was very conflicted in a 2-minute trailer, or however long this was. So I think I need to see a bit more.
Like the entire movie?
I don't know if I need to see the entire movie. No.
Usually you want to see the entire movie. You know, we're talking a lot about trailers right now, and just like, we do usually want to see the entire movie, but also trailers can give you a sense of what you want to experience, I guess.
Yeah. So for me, I did read Doctor Sleep. I've read The Shining. I actually really liked the book. And I like the movie. I think they're both good. I understand what the criticisms are, that, you know, some of the things that are changed in the movie are unnecessary. But I like them both for different reasons. Doctor Sleep, I enjoyed the book, but it's weird as hell. And I knew that they were gonna... Well, once I heard they were going to adapt it, I was just like, I don't know how they're gonna do that, because there is some stuff in there that I just don't see how it would translate to the screen. Not that it can't be done, but I couldn't picture it. But when I heard Mike Flanagan was on board, I thought, okay, all right. I'm a little more interested now, because I thought Hush was really good. I actually liked The Haunting of Hill House. I liked what he did with it. It's very different from the book, but again, they both exist for different reasons, and they accomplish different things, and so I like both of them. So I don't know. I'm very intrigued. I think it's going to be interesting. Watching the trailer, for Dr. Sleep, it made me think, okay, so some of the stuff that just probably wouldn't work for the movie is not going to happen, and so they're going in a slightly different direction. So I'm excited. I think it looks good.
Well, I am interested in whether or not it's going to wind up being a sequel to The Shining, in the sense of it's a sequel to the Kubrick film, or if it's going to be a sequel to The Shining, the book, so an adaptation of Dr. Sleep, or how it's going to navigate that, if it's going to navigate that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is because if it's a sequel to the movie more than a sequel to the book, then, I mean, like what Kristen was alluding to, there's a character that dies in the movie that did not die in the book, that ends up having a very significant impact on Danny Torrance's life. And so that's where it's like, I really hope that they kind of rewrite history a little bit and let that person still live. But I don't know. We'll see. And we will see in, what is it? November 8th is when it comes out. Did anybody see anything this week that you'd like to chat about for a minute? We didn't really have any major stuff to review. I did see Men in Black International. I think I might be the only one that did.
I forewent the screening and saw Rocket Man again, so I feel like that was money well spent.
That's not a bad choice.
It was not. The old people that were in front of us, I told you, fell asleep, and when they did wake up, they said that it was quote-unquote a little too gay. But my mom and I had a lot of fun, so...
A movie about Elton John is too gay.
It's too gay. I will say that watching that certainly helped prep me for watching the Nicholas Winding Refn show that came out this week, Too Old to Die Young, which is on Amazon. I recommend not watching it because it's literally the worst thing to have. I would love to have that scrubbed from my memory, that I watched one whole episode. How Refn must think that this is obviously proof of insanity. If you can get through all 13 episodes, or 13 hours, 10 episodes, then you are obviously insane or a real sadist. That's the only thing I can think of. And that's coming from somebody that loves Neon Demon. But this movie is just the most misogynist, disturbing bullshit that I've watched in a long time. I don't think you could literally put all my boys in this one thing and I'd still be like, this is hot fucking garbage. So it's literally atrocious.
Lauren, what'd you see this week?
I did not unfortunately get out to the movie theater to see anything new. There is a film that's coming out, I think, June 18th, that is fun, and it's a movie called Ghostlight. It's set in... basically the story is about a Shakespearean acting troupe who are about to put on a production of Macbeth in a isolated sort of little Massachusetts community. And they, of course, it's all about theatrical superstitions, and of course you're not supposed to say the name of the play when you are in the theater because it's bad luck, and you have to go through all of these different things in order to undo the curse. And basically what happens is the actor who's playing Banquo, who is an understudy also to the actor who plays Macbeth, who's played by Cary Elwes, by the way, and he's having the time of his life. He's having an absolutely great time doing this. But so the actor who's playing Banquo is having an affair with the lead actor's wife, and the two of them begin shouting Macbeth in the theater, kind of challenging the curse. And naturally, this is a horror comedy, and they incur the curse of Macbeth. And it's fun, it's light, it's entertainingly done. You know, you've got some actually really great actors like Cary Elwes. Carol Kane is in it, overacting her little heart out. She's having an awesome time doing it, and it actually is a lot of fun. You know, not something that you're going to write home about, but you know, when it comes to VOD, June 18th, I would just recommend checking it out. It's particularly the final act is just fabulous.
So yeah, like I mentioned, I did see Men in Black International this week, and Chris Hemsworth is very beautiful, and so is Tessa Thompson. The movie itself I thought it was fine, but maybe it's because I went in with my expectations like below the floor because people said it was so terrible. I didn't think it was actually that bad. I didn't think it's definitely not as funny as the other movies, but I also, a lot of it,
I'm assuming by the other movies you mean 1.
I thought 2 was funny as well.
Oh my gosh, 2 is not good. Karen Peterson.
I didn't say good, I said funny. There's a difference. But the thing is that this movie I didn't think was trying to be funny like those. It understands that Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson are not Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, and it doesn't try to make them, you know? So, I think that, I mean, there are definitely some things that don't work, but overall, I thought it was fine. There are also some things that I thought were really funny and enjoyable, like Chris Hemsworth kind of, you know, we talk about his awesome dumb blonde secretary in Ghostbusters, and in this, he's definitely supposed to be like the best agent in MIB, at least in the London branch, and but he does some things that are like typical of female spies in the genre, where he has to like sleep with someone to get information and stuff like that. So I liked that.
Are you serious?
With that. Yes, yes, and it's funny, and it's like good. Yes, thank you. So.
Yet again, Chris Hemsworth, please remake all of Marilyn Monroe's films.
Yes,
please.
Yes, exactly.
Karen, I need to ask you the important question, because I told you this has been my thing. Apparently 2019 is the year of this. So every man doesn't own buttons on their shirts anymore, and everything starts at like mid-navel. So just how low are Chris Hemsworth shirts buttoned in this movie? This is what the people want to know.
No, most of them are buttoned up pretty high. There's one part where he's trying to look casual, so he unbuttons a couple of buttons, and then Tessa goes back and's like, let's just fix this, and she, you know, closes one or two of them, so.
Damn it!
I think he's only shirtless once.
That's a travesty.
But he has this one blue linen shirt that just hangs so perfectly on him, and...
Are we talking like Armie Hammer, Call Me By Your Name, good hanging shirt?
Better?
Oh, that's ludicrous, Karen. You cannot just throw that out there.
Sorry, I'm always going to think Hemsworth's better than Hammer, so sorry.
People underestimate what we actually want from a Men in Black movie starring Chris Hemsworth. It's
Exactly.
just like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is all we need, ladies.
So on Kristen's thirst rankings, it doesn't sound like it's gonna unseat Rocket Man, but I might give it a try now.
Definitely.
Thank you for answering my in-depth analysis, Karen.
No problem. I'm here for the hard stuff, you know? All right, so that's gonna finish things out for this week, I think. So there's lots of ways that you can follow us and be part of what we do when we're not here. You can follow us on Twitter at CitizenDamePod, and like I said before, you can anything that we've talked about. If you want to comment on it, throw it out there. We love comments as long as they're nice and not mean. And they can be mean too, as long as they're not.
And if you're on Twitter, enter our contest.
We are having a What's in the Bag contest. Go on Twitter, go on our Citizen Dame Pod account, look at the picture, guess what's in the bag. You'll be entered to win what is in the bag. So, we also have Instagram at Citizen Dame Pod. You can find us on Facebook once in a while. We go there still, facebook.com/citizendame. You can email us, citizendamepod@gmail.com. We have our official website, citizendamepod.com, and there we have, we'll be getting back into the swing of our Citizen Dame 5. We have Thirst Traps. We have Feminist Fridays. Are we still doing that? I don't know. We have lots of stuff coming your way. We have some reviews that are coming up, so lots of fun stuff over on the website. If you'd like to support us with your dollars, we like that. You can go to Patreon, patreon.com/citizendame, and you can support the show for as little as $1, help us keep the lights on. As you go up the tiers, you can get access to the shows early, bonus episodes, all kinds of fun stuff. We have, if you just want to send us a couple dollars, you don't want to commit, that's cool too. That is our Ko-Fi account, ko-fi.com/citizendame. And we do have some merch and stuff in our Zazzle store, zazzle.com/citizendame. So thanks so much for listening, for supporting us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Excuse me. What happened here?
We had the best party. Kanye showed up and dropped like a whole new album. Look around! We got our asses kicked! My queen! I'll never serve another. I must end my own life in the most painful way possible.
I don't think that she would want you to,
Who are you to know what a queen would or wouldn't want? Are you a queen?
Well, I mean, to the extent that all women are, yes. But no. I'm not a queen.
You know what she is, though, is an agent.
Is that a title?
It is a title.
But maybe the best way to honor the dead is to go on living.
Yes.
I pledge loyalty eternal to you, Agent M.
No. I'm not interested in a subject.
Too late. It's done. I already pledged the loyalty. I wish you'd said no before. And if you should die before I promise to end my own life
In the most painful way possible.
Yeah, I don't like you.